Hey, I'm Delise.
And I'm Jenny.
We know that parenting comes in seasons, and even the smallest wins deserve a happy dance.
Join us as we chat with moms in every stage of the parenting journey, fixing our eyes on Jesus each step of the way.
This is Blessings and Motherhood, because we believe that you can hold tissues and confetti at the same time.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Blessings and Motherhood. Today we got to talk to a wonderful mom. Her name is Sarah, and she has so many beautiful things to share with us.
Yeah, so Sarah is a personal friend of mine, and in this conversation, we talk about the history of the phrase, you can hold tissues and confetti at the same time. We also talk about what it's like for her right now as a Jewish mom in today's culture, and so you are not going to want to miss this conversation. It was educational, encouraging, and very heartwarming.
Hey Sarah, it's so nice to have you on Blessings and Motherhood today. Could you introduce yourself for our viewers that may not know who you are?
Absolutely. Well, my name isn't actually Sarah, but I appreciate being able to do this episode with some anonymity, just based on the content wanting to be wise in today's day and age with my family and social media. So thank you for that grace. I'm not going to give a ton of personal details, but I'm a Messianic Jewish believer. And basically what that means is I've had the privilege of growing up as a Jewish person with the knowledge that Jesus is the Messiah that was promised to the Jewish people. And so that has formed my perspective of scripture and faith and life. I have 3 boys, a 10-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 1-year-old. My husband and I are having a blast raising them. It's a busy and loud household. And my husband and I have been best friends since we were 12 years old. And so getting to grow up together, experience life together, and be in this stage of life together is incredibly exciting and sweet. So very thankful for the life that God's given me.
I have loved just getting to share the little teeny part that I have shared with you of your story. And when I heard that you guys met when you were 12, I was like, that is like a movie. It's literally like a story. So it's just so cool to me. And what you all listening may not know, which to me is just a really beautiful thing about the fact that we're able to have this conversation today, is that some years back, I was with Sarah and I actually heard her say the tagline that we use for this show, that you can hold tissues and confetti at the same time. And we're going to talk about a lot of different things today. We are going to talk more about what it means for her to be a Jewish mom and different things that are going on in her life. And I wanted to actually start our conversation today, though, here, because this is a truth that we wanted to use as a huge cornerstone for this show, because we know it is something that we all interact with in every area of our lives. And so I'd love for you, Sarah, to actually take us back to when maybe the Lord was helping you to firm up that phrasing and to figure out like how to put words to that and what that was like for you and maybe some of those circumstances.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the main things that was birthed out of is a deeply held truth in scripture that like joy and the joy of the Lord is not this shakable happiness, right? It's a deeply rooted conviction, belief that in the middle of the things that are whole and the things that are broken, that the thing that holds us together right there in the middle is the Lord and is the consistency of who he is in the middle of those things, believing firmly that he is on his way and in this moment bringing wholeness to the things that don't feel whole right now. And so being able to hold both of those things at the same time, I actually don't have to summon the strength to hold them. He's holding them. And so I'm going to go with him in that. And I think this world really tends to drive home this idea of like binary, right? that hard is bad and sad is bad and all of those things. And it's not true in the presence of the Lord, right? The thing that we know is that we are able to, as his kids, look at what right now looks like, know what is to come, and hold firmly to the goodness of who he is on the way to that. And so that truth, I think, has held me through many stages of life, and especially this one.
Mm.
Yeah. How have you found that to be true in the present circumstances in today's world, that you can hold those tissues and the confetti at the same time?
Yeah, I actually, so I don't know if you're familiar with a phrase. It's a Hebrew phrase. It's called tikkun olam.
I'm not.
And so that phrase tikkun olam is, um, we're taught in Jewish culture that this is really our calling, is tikkun olam. What it means is to heal the world.
Hmm.
And the way that we see it is not so much that we as human beings are fully responsible for that healing, as much as we go with God and partner with God in bringing healing and wholeness to the world. And so if tikkun olam is really my highest calling as a daughter of God, as a human being made in the image of God, then I kind of look at life through that lens and bring it to all of these circumstances. So what that leads to is a love of life,
Mhm.
Mm.
right? If my highest calling is to be about healing and wholeness and bringing that fullness to the world, then the thing that I value the most is life. And God has, we see that all throughout scripture, that he is a God of life, right? And he is a God who creates life and brings about life. And so in the middle of all of the hard things that we're seeing right now in our world, and all of the hard stories that are true in our world right now, um, what you will see from the Jewish people, in by and large, is this love of life. So you'll see us, celebrating small moments, right? When our babies take their first steps, we celebrate that. When there's a birthday party, we celebrate that. When there's, you know, um, no crying and gnashing of teeth on the way to school, we're going to celebrate that. And it's because life is to be celebrated, even in the middle of the things that we're grieving. And so that is tissues and confetti at the same time. It's this, celebrating where we see wholeness, celebrating where we see fullness of life, participating in bringing that celebration, that fullness, that healing to the life that we have, and the lives of those that we impact. And so I've seen that really be true in this season, of probably more than any other season of my life, of noticing the things that I might have overlooked in the past to celebrate, and celebrating them because they're good. And so I think when things don't really look that good out there, it becomes more important to celebrate the good things we do see. And so that's how you hold it.
Hey guys, we want to take a break from the show to tell you about the Copper Lodge Library. So the Copper Lodge Library is a book series that preserves and presents timeless stories from the past to help families to celebrate and cultivate virtues today. The Copper Lodge Library offers a collection of stories that have built community throughout history, presented in a beautiful series of books for the whole family to enjoy. Now you can build a family culture by reading these stories together and have meaningful conversations about wisdom and virtue. we want to preserve excellent stories from the past today. So this spring, the Copper Lodge Library is releasing 3 new books: Pride and Prejudice, which we all love, The Secret Garden, which is absolutely a beautiful classic, and English epic poetry. To learn more about the Copper Lodge Library, visit copperlodgelibrary.com. Let's get back to the show.
Well, and I think that is such an important form of warfare that we can participate in to continue to. I loved the way that you said we're not creating the healing. We're not creating the wholeness. That's stuff that God does, right? That's something that only He can do. The warfare we participate in is continuing to acknowledge it, and saying, okay, even though these things are broken, even though these things are not as they should be, there are these parts over here that He has healed. And I'm not going to allow the enemy to confuse me or detract from the beauty of what He is doing over here, because the light shines in the darkness and the darkness does not overcome it.
That's exactly right.
I love that you said that and kind of drew attention to the fact that we do have to differentiate ourselves from it, because I think it would be so tempting for us to feel like we have to carry that mantle of like bringing the healing, but that's not the calling. Can you talk to us very practically speaking, because you are a mom and that's something you're doing for yourself, but you're also modeling and trying to teach your children. How do you teach them to do that, to hold tissues and confetti, to fight for remembering what is good?
Yeah. So I'm going to give like 3 really practical ways that I do that as a mom. Our family, we've agreed on 4 key words. I guess you could call them like family values.
Okay.
These words all have a scriptural foundation to them. We return our kids to these words on a daily basis when we're talking through things like character and how we treat one another and how they are as people out in the world. One would be shalom, which means peace and unity. Another one would be chesed, which is loving kindness, and gospel level love is what that word represents. Todah is thankfulness, but it's not just thankfulness, it's being grateful before you've even received what you're asking for. And then Hanani, which means here I am, but it's really about this being in agreement with God. And so we take that as a family and continuously circle those words on a daily basis of this is how we're going to show up in the world. This is our framework for making decisions. This is the basis through which we approach our interactions with one another, our words. So that continuous circling of this is how we are going to be in the world helps to give them that framework, that expectation basically of how we're going to show up. The other thing that I think has been really important is putting in spiritual rhythms and spiritual practices into the rhythm of our home. And when I say this, don't like imagine that my kids are, these perfect angels who are poring over the scriptures and spending hours in prayer with, like, no, that's not what's happening. What we do though are find these regular moments and rhythms for our kids where we do engage them with the scriptures, where we do participate in prayer together. There's those daily things we do. But I think probably more effective and more important has been a weekly rhythm of Sabbath. And the Sabbath practice of continuing to return to rest and remembering the Lord and who He is and who we are because of who He is, have given my kids, I'm starting to see the fruit of it, right? Especially in the 10-year-old, have given them like muscle memory So, like, when the world comes and tries to push them over, what you want is for them to have enough, like, muscle memory groove that kind of helps them to go back to center,
Mm.
right?
Mhm.
And so what I realized is when we kept returning to Sabbath, returning on a weekly basis in these rhythms, it's not so much about the moment or even how the moment goes, as much as what it's layering and building in them over time, so that they have what they need, that storehouse of what they need in order to be able to respond and to be able to move past with God the things that the world is throwing at them. And like Sabbath was not my idea. That was
Mhm.
the Lord. His in his brilliant wisdom is kind of giving us that rhythm to return to. And I really do see in scripture this consistency that's for adults, but really is for kids. It roots in them this understanding of who God is and who they are. That's what Sabbath really does. And I think that practice, along with the other things that we're doing on a consistent basis, has probably been the the greatest, I guess, point of transformation I've seen in my kids, when it comes to their perspective on what it looks like to encounter the hard in the world. Because it's like I said, when they get knocked by the world, the things that we've done on a weekly basis, regular basis, reminding each other about who God is and what's
Mm.
true, helps them to come back to that center. And I just want to share one story that I learned. You can cut this out of the podcast if you need to for time. Um, the history of Sabbath for the Jewish people is long, but I learned recently when I was visiting the Holocaust Museum about something really tremendous related to children and the Sabbath. Um, and talk about like being in the middle of the hardest time ever. At one particular concentration camp, the children were all in a common barrack. The thing about this, though, was that these children were from different regions of Europe. And
Mhm.
so a lot of them spoke different languages from one another. And so it was hard for them to communicate. It was hard for them to relate. But every Friday night, they would go to the latrine, which was the bathroom in the barracks. They would hide in the back of the latrine together. And all these kids from all of these different places in the middle of a death camp would whisper back and forth to each other the Sabbath blessings in Hebrew. And they all knew what each other was saying.
Mm.
They were all deeply connected in that moment,
Mm.
reminding each other about blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who has sanctified us with his commandments and invited us to light the Shabbat lights. They were responding to one another in words that they all understood, to a rhythm they all were familiar with, and it held them upright in the middle of a camp of death. That's the power that those Jewish parents who had no idea where their kids were, they gave their kids exactly what they needed in that moment, and it held them. And so I pray that that's true of what we're giving our kids. We're giving them hope, right?
Mm.
Yeah.
Mhm. We're not gonna cut that out. So
That was beautiful. That is beautiful. I never knew that. I was in
Mm.
school and learned about everything that happened, and I did a report on one of the camps, and they don't include that in your history books, but you guys are passing along this stuff to your children, and that's beautiful. And it's just like, we memorize these Bible verses with our kids, and we hope that, like the Bible says, they are ingrained in their hearts, right? They're
Yes.
written on our
Yes.
hearts and in our homes. And
Yes,
If that's the only thing that we give them, we have done our job, right?
that's exactly right.
In passing along that to them.
Yes.
That's a beautiful story. Got me
Yes.
teared up, girl. Sarah, I'd love just for you to talk maybe a little bit about what it does mean to you to be not only a mom, but a Jewish mom. Could you dive into that for us a little bit?
Yeah. Um, you know, everything, there's like pre-October 7th and post-October 7th. And you know, pre-October 7th, I think 2021, I knew things were going to be a little different for my kids growing up than it was for me. But October 7th, everything changed, and I know that their world growing up as Jewish men is completely changed. Um, I think the things that were all there below the surface all came bubbling out and are revealed in terms of just the climate of what it means for them to grow up in this world as Jewish men. I'll share maybe some more personal pieces because I think you can scroll through the social media and news sources and see perspectives on what's out there. But for us personally, I'll start with Halloween. In our neighborhood, um, the doorbell rang, and I opened the door, and there were two teenage boys staring back at me, and they both had rifles. They both had masks on, but one was dressed like an SS officer from Nazi Germany in World War II and greeted me with Guten Tag. And I know we all kind of come from different traditions. And so for me to say this might sound a little crazy, but it felt really dark, like a dark presence was in front of me. And so I asked the question, what are you? I didn't ask, who are you? I asked the question, what are you? And he would not respond to me. And, you know, I put the candy in their bucket and I looked at them and asked one more time, what are you? And he just responded again with Guten Tag and turned around and walked away. Now, later on my Ring doorbell, because I have a Ring doorbell, I looked at the video. Before I opened the door, they did a Heil Hitler. Before I opened the door, they had no reason to do it. There was no one in front of them, but they did that. They did a Heil Hitler before I opened the door. These are young kids in my own neighborhood showing up on my doorstep. And as a Jewish mom with Jewish kids, someone else's kids being let out of the house in that costume. Just I have no other explanation for that being allowed other than you're okay with it. And so the fact that that means there was a parent that was okay with it is I it's it's so sad, but it's also scary as a mom to know that that's being let out the door without any guard, you know, for the people that they might encounter. So that's one. My son at his Christian school, private Christian school, my 10-year-old, um, has repeatedly had kids in his class who know he's Jewish tell him what they think about Israel and what they think about what's happening between Israel and the Palestinians of Hamas and Gaza. And all of it is very much, you can tell they're repeating what they're hearing their parents say, but it's the talk track of Israel's committing genocide and your people are monsters. And even to the point where in the lunchroom, some of them will stand up and yell Free Palestine and look at him while they're doing it.
Mm.
And then more recently, my 7-year-old, their teacher has these language cards that do hello, goodbye in different languages in their classroom. And one of them fell and was on a student's desk. And the one that was on the student's desk was a Hebrew word, lehitrot, which is a goodbye. And the kid punched the card and said, "Nobody in this class talks Jewish."
Mm.
And my son, being my son, said, "Well, I do. And you shouldn't do that." And the teacher noticed something was happening and got involved. And the kid, told the teacher that my son was a big fat liar. And the other kids, said he's telling the truth. And anyways, the teacher handled it. But I share those stories just more personally of here we are in, random suburb of the United States in a Christian school where my kids are very likely the only Jewish kids in the school, but kids from ages 10 and 7 are repeating back to them essentially these ideas, these words, these names, these attitudes that are very combative and derogatory and in many cases hateful. It's for me as a mom, October 7th changed everything. And that's true for my other Jewish friends, that I'm not the only one, and I probably have one of the lighter loads of anti-Semitic stories since October 7th.
All right, well, hey guys, we hate to cut the conversation here, but she had so many wonderful things to say. We thought that it would be best to make this episode a two-parter.
That's right. So you can find us over on social media at Blessings and Motherhood. And in the meantime, we would love for you to share this conversation with a friend or family member who you know would find it encouraging.
We'll see you next time.
Bye.